fundamental difficulty of the United States today is a declining capitalist system. The empire is in tatters. It barely exists. Jamie Dimon, the head of the largest bank in the United States, gave an interview, actually two or three of them, and talked about the weakening U.S. economy. Now, he always talks as if he were a spectator rather than one of the people responsible for it. Well, Mr. Trump pretends in a different way, but is dealing with the same weakening economy and the same vanishing empire and the same hobbled capitalism. But Mr. Trump's specialty, and that goes back to the first time he became a serious public figure, if you remember riding down that escalator somewhere in New York City and explaining to the world that the problems we face are about Mexican immigrants, whom he then slandered. Mr. Trump specializes, as leaders often do in declining empires, in finding scapegoats. Mexicans are scapegoats. The Chinese are scapegoats. And the American left, that he understands as well as he understands everything else, namely not at all, is likewise now going to be a scapegoat. When you can't fix a problem, you blame somebody for it to detract from your failure to fix it. Mr. Trump told us he was going to end the war in Ukraine in a matter of days or weeks. False. He was going to end the war in Gaza in a short time. False. He's actually gone to war in Iran, a war that wasn't there when he became president, and he's gearing up, evidently, to do the same to Venezuela. The man is finding people around the world to blame. I want to remind people, it's a parallel I would take seriously. Germany, in the years before Hitler, faced the loss of its empire. That was accomplished in World War I, when literally the German Empire in Africa, Asia, was taken away by the winning side of World War I, so the Germans lost their empire. In 1923, they had the worst inflation in modern history that wiped out their entire middle class. All their savings accumulated over the 19th century were lost, and it ended up by the end of 1923, all those savings were barely enough to get you a quarter pound of butter at the local store. And then in 1929, as we all know, the Great Depression hit. So in a very few years, 1918 to 1933, or 1929 if you like, the German working class was really whacked. And in desperation, they turned to a leader who promised them, I'll fix it right away, and here are the scapegoats. Jews, Roma people, Slavic people, all the collection of scapegoats Mr. Hitler specialized in. And then he went to war in order to distract the people from what was happening at home so they could focus on the glorious victories being achieved abroad. If it sounds familiar, it should. And if you think that I'm telling you a story that gets you depressed, don't be. Today's headlines are full of what the French people just did, saying, we're not going to tolerate this. And in Nepal, halfway across the world, another people are rising up and saying no. The important question is not that Mr. Trump has found the left to scapegoat, that he wants to turn a killing in Utah into something more he can say, arresting somebody of Mexican descent in order to slander Mexico as a whole. Cheap shot. We all kind of know better. But yeah, he'll try. And you know what that shows? Desperation is what it shows. And that desperation is first and foremost economic. We're facing a risk of inflation. We're facing the risk of a recession. Our foreign connections are falling apart. The rest of the world is mobilizing to go around us, to isolate us. That's the reality. Meanwhile, the inequality in wealth and income gets worse and worse. And we just had a spectacle in which the board of directors of a typical American mega capitalist company, Tesla, offers its own CEO a pay package over the next few years worth $1 trillion. That's the achievement of capitalism, to make the already richest person even richer than he has been up until now. It is obscene, and it will not last. Time will for sure tell whether a return of big business from the rest of the world moving its production to the United States is a serious phenomenon. So far, we only have words. And as I have known this thing, it's real easy for a prime minister or a big corporation to tell you about the enormous investments they're planning to make next year, 3 years from now, and 5 years. Most of the executives in top positions who make those promises won't be in those positions 3 years from now, when those promises will likely be forgotten, number one. Number two, the problem of the United States is it's not in a position to get the lackeys it's had since the end of World War II, Western Europe, Japan, and so on, to do what it needs to have them do. They should all now become colonies. Let me explain. Colonies in the following precise sense. They are being charged to do business in the United States. You want to sell in the United States, you're going to have to work out with the importing company. If you yourself don't import into the United States, you're going to have to pay a fee. It's an entrance fee to the American economy. That's what a tariff is. If you sell in the American economy, you're going to have to pay the American government a fee. And the American government is so desperate, it says either you pay it, the company abroad coming in, or the American importer pays it. We don't care. We are equally burdening you and the American. That's not something the American government wants to do. It wants others to pay, but it can't get that. So it has to do a deal which hurts its own so-called program. Why in the world would you come here if one of the things you're going to have to do as a business is pay real high tariffs, which could be raised at any time, on the imported portion of whatever it is you produce here, which, at least for the years ahead, is going to be significant. No, I think what I see is a declining empire, no longer able to control huge parts of the world, China, India, Russia, BRICS, and therefore having to eat its own colonies, to savage Canada and Mexico, its major trading partners, doing God knows what kind of damage to those societies. And I want to be clear, the United States may get von der Leyen or Merz or the Japanese leaders secretly to give away their country's needs, but the only way possible for them to stay in office is to hype a great danger. That's the hysteria over Russian invasion, which you can see ratcheted up 6 more notches when some drones go flying over Poland. This is a very useful hysteria, focusing the blame on Russia when your problem is the United States. But you can't say that because they can really hurt you, which the Russians can't. The Russians are having trouble subduing Ukraine. They're going to go after the rest of Europe? That's a joke. Nobody in their right mind, except if you're desperate, if you need a scapegoat. And what's the scapegoat in Europe for? The scapegoating of Russia. They are in a position in which to salvage anything in their economy, they have to come up with a whole new programming, here we go, of subsidizing their own industries. That's part of how they will react and are reacting against the United States, whatever they say publicly. The Europeans know what is being done to them. They don't want it. They are afraid that if they are hollowed out of their industry, their own people will turn against them. And you can see it already in the streets of France, in the right-wing shift of the German political scene, the British political, Farage in England, Alternative für Deutschland in Germany, and so on. It's not working real well. The Americans are desperate and are taking care of themselves. They hope to do that at the expense of their used-to-be allies/colonies, so they squeeze the crap out of them, who in turn demonize Russia to justify the military buildup, which will be the match mask for subsidizing their own industry at the expense of their social democracy welfare states. That's what's happening. And I don't think that's going to work. And that's Mr. Trump's worst nightmare, that all of this scapegoating will not work. A friend of mine is an industrialist in Europe. And in my latest conversation with him, where I said, is there any way that you might actually move your production to the United States? He said, are you crazy? And I said, well, why? He said, every day in our newspaper in the country in Europe, Western Europe, where he lives, we see pictures of American troops patrolling American cities. You're a country that I wouldn't move to in a million years. There's too much turmoil. And then I watched your new army, your ICE army, closing down a South Korean battery plant in Georgia out of the hysteria you have cultivated against immigrants. I'm not moving there. I'm not entering that crazy place that is occupying its own cities. I want to quote to you finally a statement made by Vice President Vance in commenting on the occupation that's supposed to end, although I gather it isn't, in Washington, D.C. by federal troops. The Vice President said with great enjoyment that his fondest hope is to see that done in cities across America. This is crazy stuff. And we are in a country that is falling apart. And all the pretense of its scapegoating this one, that one, shooting from the hip before you know anything. They don't even know who did the thing in Utah, let alone what the motivations might be. Nor will it be believable once they do. We can't believe anything anymore. And I used to use the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In the last 3 weeks, I had 2 demonstrations. The president fires the woman who runs it, and the next person in charge explains that for the last year, we have overestimated the number of jobs in this country by 1 million. I mean, these are all symptoms, folks. You can pretend with this one or that one to dispute it or to quibble about it, but the bottom line is everywhere the retreat, the desperation, the scapegoating is a substitute for being able to do anything serious about this.